Recently, Optimism, one of the largest layer 2 networks built on top of Ethereum, had an amazing announcement. And I am not talking about their token airdrop. While the airdrop was part of the announcement, and they did give over 250,000 Ethereum addresses significant chunks of their new OP token, the announcement was so much more than that. In this announcement, Optimism introduced a proposal for a completely new and experimental form of governance. Now, I know that I might lose some people that are here to make money and not to learn about new governance systems, but hear me out. Optimism's new governance proposal has the potential to not only revolutionize Web3 governance, but also break into the real world. A major part of this new government structure introduces a citizen house, which is made up of soulbound citizenship NFTs. Citizens of this new Optimism Collective get to be powerful decision makers and decide which public goods are going to be funded from the revenues from the Optimism protocol. The best part is, this isn't all just theoretical. Optimism will start distributing these citizenships soon, and there are things that you can do today to start earning one for yourself. In this video, I'm going to give you a summary of the new Optimism Collective, how it will work, and how it could create a positive feedback loop that makes Optimism the biggest force for good on the planet. I'm also going to lay out what we know about these citizenship NFTs and the steps that you can take to earn your citizenship and join the Optimism Collective. Up until now, the vast majority of governance in cryptos has been one token, one vote. The simplicity of this model is probably why it's so widely adopted in the first place, but it comes with a lot of problems. People sometimes act like the DAOs that have this governance mechanism are democracies, but in reality, they are plutocracies. The amount of influence you have is directly proportional to the amount of tokens you hold, which, because you can buy them, is directly proportional to your wealth. Even worse, if there was some major decision that a protocol was going to make, and there was an entity that could benefit financially from that decision, they could simply buy enough tokens to swing the vote and then vote in their favor. Imagine if there was a proposed law to regulate fuel emissions on cars. But instead of this law being voted on, there was just an auction, and the highest bidder got to choose whether or not the law was passed. Even though this is something that might be a net positive for the world, those car companies have a huge financial impact from that law being passed. And so they would likely gather all their resources to buy out that auction so they could be the ones that decide. Unfortunately, this is the exact kind of system that these one token, one vote models enable. The adoption of this token voting model has been so frustrating to see because Ethereum and other blockchains grant so many interesting tools and possibilities for creating interesting governance mechanisms. Interesting governance mechanisms that could actually be better than the governance that we see in the real world, instead of worse or the same. I think Jing, one of the co-founders of Optimism, put it best.
I think everyone has seen how the Web2 incentive structures have played out, where you have revenue, power, influence continuously accruing to this single centralized source. And Web3 is supposed to reimagine that, yet we still can fall prey to the same pressures of centralization, desires to maximize profit.
Is that something you see in the crypto space today?
Yeah, 100%. Just because you can build new incentive systems doesn't mean everyone is building new incentive systems.
Lucky for us, the folks at Optimism have actually put in the work to build a new incentive system. Their main announcement came in the form of a post on Mirror, which I'll link below. This new governance system is called the Optimism Collective, and it creates two separate houses of governance. Carl, another co-founder of Optimism, did a great job explaining this.
So the Optimism Collective is a bicameral governance system. We have two co-equal houses, A, the citizens house, B, the token house. Okay, what is the major difference between these two houses? Well, it actually comes down to the transferability or sellability of the governance rights for each house, right? So the token house, you of course have these tokens. They're out there in the world, they're liquid, they're transferable. Then you have the citizens house, where these citizenships are identities. They are soul-bound tokens, as in you cannot transfer them, you cannot sell them. Instead, you can earn them, receive them, give them, etc.
So what are the actual responsibilities and powers of these two houses? The biggest detail we have comes in the form of this Venn diagram in their announcement. One quick caveat is that they do say that this chart is for illustration only, and because this is an experiment, it's likely that some of these things will change a little bit. But I do think it does give a good idea of what the OP Foundation is currently thinking. So in this Venn diagram, we can see that the exclusive responsibilities of the token house is to handle project incentives, protocol upgrades, and treasury funds. I think the main reason for having a token house is that it is still valuable for people to have economic incentives for Optimism to do well. Handling things like protocol upgrades makes sense because the token holders have a direct financial incentive to make sure that Optimism is running well. If there was some upgrade that somehow crashed Optimism, then the value of those tokens would crash as well, which means that those incentives are pretty well aligned. The Citizen House, on the other hand, is in charge of distributing retroactive public goods funding. This is actually a beautiful first application of this citizenship model. In order to choose the public goods that had the highest impact, you really want that to be a more democratic voting system and not something that you could gain by buying a lot of tokens. The Citizenship House functions more as a democracy, and it's hoped that those citizens will be much more likely to vote for things that have the highest overall positive impact on the ecosystem. Shared by both houses, we have things like network parameters and one very interesting piece, granting citizenships. If you're like me, then you're probably thinking, this is so freaking cool. I want to be a citizen. I want to be a part of this project. How do I get my citizenship NFT? Optimism has not explicitly stated how these citizenship NFTs will be granted, but we do have a general idea. Team members from Optimism have said that one way that these citizenships will be distributed is by granting allotments of them to communities on the Optimism network, which they are calling OPCOs. These OPCOs will each have their own mechanism to distribute these citizenships. Over time, OPCOs will be given an impact score based on the retroactive public good funding round and their anti-Sybil process, which is basically making sure that bots don't get all of the citizenships. Then in future rounds, the number of citizenships that these OPCOs get might decrease or increase based on those scores. The next round of retroactive public goods funding for Optimism is coming in Q3, and I'd expect that it would be the first round where citizens get to vote on the projects that get that funding. One other way to become a citizen is if another citizen gives you a citizenship. The Optimism team has hinted that's likely that citizens will be able to grant citizenships to other people. By starting the process by giving the citizenship allotments to OPCOs, they're seeding the core of the Optimism Collective. And from that core, it can expand round by round to include more people. So, how can you actually get a citizenship? These OPCOs are most likely protocols that are being built on top of Optimism. So the best way to start earning a citizenship is to go look at the ecosystem page on Optimism's website and then start getting involved in those projects. Become a part of the community, contribute to building those projects, and it's likely that down the road, you'll get a citizenship. It's also possible that you'll be able to get a citizenship by doing things like providing liquidity for different projects or actually using the protocols. One other way that you might be able to get a citizenship is to join the Optimism community and start contributing to Optimism itself. Optimism wants the building of their protocol to be completely decentralized. So if you're a developer, go look at their GitHub and they have a bunch of good first issues that let you dive into the codebase. They've been giving out soulbound NFTs to those that contribute to the codebase, so those might have some impact on getting a citizenship as well. If you're not a developer, I'm sure there are lots of other ways that you can contribute to Optimism, so just hop in their Discord and ask. Okay, let's just say that you do earn an Optimism citizenship NFT and you get to vote on the retroactive public goods funding. So what? I think people are really sleeping on just how impactful and crazy this could be. Layer 2 protocols have the opportunity to generate a lot of revenue from their sequencer. Even though Optimism is just getting started, they've already generated over $25 million in revenue. There is more and more activity happening on L2s, and it's very likely that this number will go up. Not only will it go up, but it will probably go way up. Every subsequent round of retroactive public goods funding will be more valuable, and there will be more competition to create these amazing public goods. These public goods will benefit the Optimism ecosystem, which will in turn generate more revenue for the Optimism protocol, which in turn means a bigger prize for creating impactful projects. The whole point of this Optimism Collective is to reward the people that are doing the most good for the ecosystem and the most good for the world, which is amazing because don't we want to live in a world where those who are most rewarded for their work are the ones that are doing the best work for the world? If this feedback loop works as intended, the Optimism Collective could one day be hundreds of millions of people. And instead of just solving localized problems in one crypto protocol, they could be solving problems for the entire world. This really is an amazing vision, and I'm so excited that Optimism has introduced this governance experiment. I hope it works. In the meantime, I know that I'm going to do what I can to contribute to earn citizenship in this community. Thanks for watching, I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next video.